Mercedes just won the first 2 races of the 2026 season. 1-2 in Australia, 1-2 in China. Complete dominance. But now, just days before Japan, the FIA is starting to investigate. Because teams have found something. Not speculation. Not rumors. Actual behavior on the car that doesn't match the rest of the grid. A diffuser that adapts to speed. A front wing that reacts with a delay. And a system that looks legal, but behaves like active aerodynamics. And here's why this is serious. The rules are clear. Only specific parts of the car are allowed to move. Everything else must stay completely fixed. No exceptions. So if Mercedes has found a way around that, this isn't just innovation. This is a loophole that could decide the entire championship. And the timing couldn't be bigger. Because Suzuka is next. One of the most demanding tracks in Formula 1. If there's anything unusual about this car, Japan will expose it. So the real question is not whether Mercedes is fast. It's whether they're about to get investigated. For something no one else saw coming. At first, no one questioned it. Mercedes came into the season prepared. Sharp. Efficient. Almost flawless. Australia looked strong. China looked even stronger. And by the end of that second race, it felt like the gap was already too big. But here's where things start to change. Because when something looks perfect in Formula 1, teams don't just accept it. They investigate it. Quietly. And that's exactly what started happening after China. Engineers from different teams began reviewing the data. Not just lap times. Not just sector performance. But behavior. How the car moves through corners. How it reacts under braking. How it transitions under load. And what they found didn't match what they expected. Because Mercedes wasn't just fast. They were consistent in a way that didn't make sense. Lap after lap. No instability. No sudden corrections. No visible struggle. Even in conditions where other cars start to slide, the Mercedes stayed planted. And that's unusual. Because every car has a limit. Every car reaches a point where grip falls away. But this one seemed to delay that moment. Almost like it had more control than it should. And that's when the questions began. Because if the performance isn't coming from straight-line speed, and it's not coming from raw power, then it has to come from somewhere else. Somewhere deeper in the car. And that leads directly to aerodynamics. But not just traditional aerodynamics. Something more complex. Something related to how the car behaves over time. Because this isn't about a single moment. It's about consistency across an entire lap. And that's what makes it so difficult to explain. Because one fast corner can be luck. One fast lap can be setup. But repeating that performance, over and over again, that requires something more. Something built into the system itself. And this is where teams started connecting the dots. Not from one race, but from both. Australia, China, different circuits, different conditions. Same result, same behavior. And when that happens, it stops being coincidence. It becomes a pattern. And once a pattern is identified, it becomes a target. Because now, teams know where to look. And more importantly, they know what they're looking for. And that's when everything starts to accelerate. Because once multiple teams see the same thing, the pressure builds. Internally, technically, and eventually, politically. And that's exactly where this situation is heading. Because the more they analyze, the clearer it becomes. This is not just a fast car. This is something different. Something that doesn't behave like the rest of the grid. And that realization is what triggered everything that comes next. And this is where everything starts to focus on one area. Not the engine. Not the drivers. The aerodynamics. Because once teams ruled out power, once they ruled out strategy, there was only one place left to look. The airflow. Now, this is where things get complicated. Because aerodynamics in Formula 1 is not just about speed. It's about control. How the car behaves when it's pushed to the limit. And Mercedes is behaving differently. So engineers started breaking the car down, piece by piece. And very quickly, they all landed on the same area. The floor. More specifically, the diffuser. Now this is where the first real concern appears. Because Mercedes is using a concept that stands out immediately. A slot in the diffuser. A visible opening. Not hidden. Not disguised. Just there. And that matters. Because in modern Formula 1, nothing is accidental. Every line, every surface, every opening, has a purpose. And this one is doing something very specific. It's controlling how air exits the car. But more importantly, it's controlling how stable that airflow remains under pressure. Because here's the key detail. Airflow under a Formula 1 car is extremely sensitive. Small changes in speed, Small changes in angle, small changes in load, can completely disrupt it. That's why cars become unstable in high-speed corners. That's why drivers fight the car. That's why mistakes happen. But the Mercedes doesn't react like that. And this is where the slot becomes important, because it allows air to pass through in a controlled way. It feeds the diffuser. It stabilizes the flow, even when conditions change. And that alone is already a big advantage. But here's the part that changes everything. That airflow is not constant. It reacts. At higher speeds, it behaves differently. Under load, it behaves differently. In corners, it behaves differently. So even though nothing is physically moving, the effect changes. It adapts. And that's where the line starts to blur. Because the regulations are very strict. No active aerodynamic systems beyond what's allowed. No exceptions. But what if you create something that behaves like it's active, without actually moving? That's the question teams are asking. Because if the answer is yes, then Mercedes hasn't just built a fast car. They've built something smarter. Something that works with conditions, instead of fighting them. But here's where it gets even more serious. Because the diffuser alone doesn't explain everything. It explains stability. It explains consistency. But not to this level. So engineers kept digging. And that's when they realized something critical. The airflow entering the diffuser is just as important as the diffuser itself. Because if that airflow is stable, then the entire system becomes more powerful, more predictable, more effective. And that leads directly to the front of the car. Because whatever is feeding that airflow has to be just as precise, just as controlled. And once teams started looking there, they found something that raised even more questions. Something small, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once you see it. And this is where everything becomes impossible to ignore. Because once teams shifted their focus to the front, they found the missing piece. The front wing. Now at first, nothing looked illegal. In fact, Mercedes is doing something simpler than everyone else. While other teams use multiple moving elements, Mercedes uses just one main moving flap. Everything else, completely fixed. And that should be a disadvantage. Less flexibility. Less adjustment. But in reality, it creates something far more valuable. Stability. A very clean, very predictable airflow structure. And that airflow feeds directly into the floor, into the diffuser, into the entire aerodynamic system. So now, you have a stable front, feeding a reactive rear. But here's the moment where everything changed. Because when analysts slowed down the footage, they saw it. The delay. The front wing doesn't react instantly. It takes time. Around 800 milliseconds in certain situations. And that might sound small, but in Formula 1, that's massive. Because that delay creates a transition. A moment where the car is not fully in one state, or the other. And during that moment, the balance shifts rearward, stabilizing the car mid-corner. Exactly when the driver needs it most. Now connect that to the diffuser. A diffuser that reacts to airflow changes. A system that becomes more effective, the more stable that airflow is. So while the front wing is transitioning, the airflow underneath the car is changing. And the diffuser responds, adapting in real time. Not through movement, but through behavior. And that's the key. Because this is no longer about individual parts. It's about interaction. Front wing timing, airflow stability, diffuser response. All working together. All creating the same result. Consistency, control, and performance that doesn't drop. And this is exactly why teams are concerned. Because you can copy a wing. You can copy a diffuser. But copying how systems interact, that's a completely different challenge. That requires understanding. And right now, Mercedes might be the only team that truly understands it. But here's the real problem. If this interaction is intentional, if this delay is part of the design, then we're not looking at a clever trick. We're looking at something much bigger. A new way of extracting performance. A way that sits right on the edge of the rules. Because nothing is technically illegal. Everything follows the regulations. But together, it behaves like something that shouldn't exist. And that's exactly why the FIA is now watching closely. Because once behavior becomes the advantage, not just the components, the rules start to lose clarity. And when that happens, intervention is only a matter of time. Now we're heading into Japan. And Suzuka will test everything. High-speed corners. Constant load. No room for instability. If this system is real, Mercedes will dominate again. But if there's even the smallest flaw, even a tiny inconsistency in how this interaction works, this is where it will break. And if it breaks, everyone will see it. And once everyone sees it, there will be no more questions. Only decisions. And those decisions could change everything. And this is where the situation reaches its most dangerous point. Because up until now, this has been technical, engineering, design, innovation. But from this moment forward, it becomes political. Inside Formula One, that's when things escalate. Because teams are no longer just trying to understand Mercedes. They're trying to stop them. Not publicly. Not yet. But internally, the conversations have already started. Engineers reporting unusual behavior. Technical directors comparing data. Simulations trying, and failing, to replicate the same stability. And when multiple teams reach the same conclusion, the pressure builds. Fast. Because now it's not one opinion. It's a pattern. And patterns in Formula One always lead to action. Now the FIA is in a very delicate position. Because on one side, everything appears legal. No extra moving parts. No obvious violation. No clear breach of the rules. But on the other side, the behavior of the car is raising serious questions. And that's where things become complicated. Because the FIA doesn't just regulate components. It regulates intent. If a system is designed to behave like active aerodynamics, even without physically moving, then the interpretation of the rules starts to shift. And that's exactly what's happening here. So now imagine this. Japan weekend begins. Practice sessions start. And suddenly, cameras are watching more closely. Slow motion footage. Different angles. More focus on the front wing. More focus on the rear. More focus on how the car behaves, corner after corner. Because this is how investigations really happen. Not through announcements. Through observation. And if the FIA sees something consistent, something repeatable, something that confirms what teams are already suspecting, then everything accelerates. Technical discussions turn into directives. Questions turn into clarifications. And clarifications turn into restrictions. Sometimes overnight. And that's the real threat for Mercedes. Not disqualification. Not penalties. But losing the advantage.